Hello, valued viewers. I hope you're all doing very well. Just a quick note from me. Let me know in the comments below if you had as much fun watching this video as I did putting it together. I've never seen another like it on YouTube or any other similar platform, and the video covers the unique parallel history of battleships and steam locomotives. It's uncanny, and like I said, I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope you all had fun watching it. Thank you. Our journey begins in the year of 1712 with the invention of what I consider to be the single most important invention in human history, the steam engine. And in that year, the first commercially successful engine that could transmit continuous power to a machine was developed by Thomas Newcomen. In 1764, a man named James Watt made a critical improvement by removing spent steam to a separate vessel for condensation, which greatly improved the amount of work obtained per unit of fuel consumed. Steam locomotives were invented after the introduction of high-pressure steam engines when the Boulton and Watt patent expired in 1800. Steam-hauled public railways began with the Stockholm and Darlington Railway in 1825. The use of steam engines on railroads proved extraordinary since large amount of goods and raw materials could now be delivered to cities and factories alike at a fraction of the cost traveling by wagon. On February 21, 1804, British mining engineer, inventor, and explorer Richard Trevithick debuted the first full-scale working railway steam locomotive in the Welsh mountain town of Merthyr Tydfil. The first warship to be powered by steam was called the Demologos. She was a wooden floating battery built to defend New York Harbor from the Royal Navy during the War of 1812. The vessel was designed to a unique pattern by Robert Fulton and was later renamed to the Fulton after his death. Okay, so thus far we've established the origin of the steam locomotive and the steam-powered warship. Now, as you can probably imagine, there were many more advancements throughout the 19th century and 20th centuries to evolve both of these mega important inventions, directly derived from the steam engine. And furthermore, it should be noted that the English Royal Navy maintained its supremacy on the world's oceans throughout the 19th and early to mid 20th centuries. Beginning in the year 1904, United States railroad thinking had began shifting toward larger and larger locomotives that could haul extraordinary amounts of freight. In keeping with such thinking, Baltimore and Ohio Railroad number 2400 was built by Elko. Nicknamed Old Maud, it was an 0660 weighing at 334,500 pounds and had axle loads of 60,000 pounds. Received negatively at first due to speed limitations arising from the short wheelbase and stiff suspension, it gained support during its service, and it was soon followed by Baldwin examples and then steadier, heavier, and more powerful successors. And conversely, in 1906, England's Royal Navy maintained its supremacy on the world's oceans by inventing the first all-uniform main battery warship to be called the Dreadnought. The launching of the Dreadnought had dire consequences felt throughout the world. The British Royal Navy could not be allowed to go unmatched with a warship that possessed such high-caliber weaponry, and thus nations such as Germany, France, the United States, and the upstart Empire of Japan took notice and started building battleships that could match the firepower of the new English warship. A naval arms race had begun. In the United States in particular, in having seen the relative success of the Old Maud locomotive, U.S. railroads began seeking heavier, larger, and faster steam locomotives to meet their demands. And with the United States having entered World War I, the needs of these particular demands cannot be understated. And as a result, locomotives such as the USRA 282 Heavy Mikado and the 482 Mountain-type locomotives began appearing. In the years leading up to World War I, the British Royal Navy turned to speed in order to gain an advantage over other world powers. As such, they developed a cruiser battleship hybrid that was capable of speeds greater than 30 knots and maintained the battleship's 15-inch main gun armament. As a result, this led to designs such as the HMS Repulse and the HMS Hood. These ships approached 800 feet long and did indeed eclipse the 30-knot speed requirement. However, they were failures in that they could not go toe-to-toe with a battleship because they lacked the armor protection that battleships possessed. Therefore, from that point on, the British Royal Navy and the rest of the world powers set out to design the ultimate in battleship design. That is, a battleship of speed, heavy armor, heavy armament, that opposing forces would fear in combat. Meanwhile, obscured within all of this upsizing of the battleship, lied a new type of warship, the aircraft carrier. And just as it was with the battleships, the United States railroad companies returned to the articulated steam locomotive in its quest for bigger, larger, and faster. And by the late 1920s, giant articulated steam locomotives such as the Yellowstone and the Y4 began hitting the rails. These new locomotives became a standard of which to build upon in what was later to become the apex of steam locomotives. In 1936, the Union Pacific Railroad teamed up with the American Locomotive Company, and together they designed a 4664 articulated steam locomotive capable of speeds of 70 miles an hour. They created the Challenger. And finally, a U.S. railroad company had achieved bigger, stronger, faster that they had long sought in a steam locomotive. Meanwhile, in 1937, and despite growing evidence of the battleship's obsolescence, the Japanese Navy laid the keel of what was become the first super battleship, the Yamato. The Yamato, and later her sister ship Musashi, became the world's largest and heaviest battleships ever built. Their 18.1-inch main gun armament was also the largest ever placed on a warship. Only the United States Navy had any sort of response to the massive Japanese battleships in the 4 Iowa-class battleships, the New Jersey, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Missouri, which together represented the pinnacle of United States battleship design. Conversely, in the U.S. railroad industry, in 1934, the Budd Company introduced the Pioneer Zephyr train set built for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy. This train was powered by Electromotive Corporation's prime mover. This train made history, traveling between Denver, Colorado, Chicago in just over 13 hours. And in 1941, EMD released this FT diesel locomotive, which began the U.S. railroad industry's movement toward dieselization, and the end of the era of steam was in sight. In November of 1940, the British Royal Navy launched the first all-aircraft-against-ship naval attack in history, employing 21 Fairey Swordfish biplane torpedo bombers from the aircraft carrier HMS Illustrious in the Mediterranean Sea. The attack struck the Italian battle fleet at the Regia Marina at anchor in the harbor of Taranto using aerial torpedoes despite the shallowness of the water. The success of this attack augured the ascendancy of naval aviation over the big guns of battleships. According to Admiral Cunningham, Taranto and the night of 11th into 12th November of 1940 should be remembered forever as having shown once and for all that the fleet air arm of the Royal Navy is its most devastating weapon and not the battleship. Inspired by the results by the British Royal Navy's attack at Taranto, the Imperial Japanese Navy on December 7, 1941, launched an air attack against the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. The attack comprised of 353 Imperial Japanese aircraft launched from 6 aircraft carriers. Of the 8 United States naval battleships present, all were damaged and 4 were sunk. All but the USS Arizona were later raised, and 6 were returned to service and went on to fight in World War II. The Japanese also sank or damaged 3 cruisers, 3 destroyers, an anti-aircraft training ship, and 1 mine layer. Also, more than 180 U.S. aircraft were destroyed. The Pearl Harbor attack further cemented the notion that the days of the battleship being the primary capital ship in war were over. And throughout World War II, the battleship took on secondary roles. And only on rare occasion did they engage each other in ship-to-ship combat. In a sheer twist of irony, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and the subsequent entry of the United States into World War II delayed the dieselization of United States Railroad. And not unlike the Japanese battleship Yamato or the United States battleship Iowa, this twist of fate allowed the U.S. railroads to design, build, and deploy the largest steam locomotives ever built. Locomotives such as the Union Pacific Big Boy, the Chesapeake and Ohio Allegheny, and the Norfolk and Western Y6B. This while also knowing that the days of steam were nearing an end, as were the days of the battleship. Once World War II concluded, the battleships were rapidly decommissioned, placed in reserve and/or scrapped, and in turn, the rapid dieselization of United States railroads began, while steam locomotives were rapidly removed from mainline service. The U.S. Iowa-class battleships saw spot duty in the Korean War and the Vietnam War. They laid inactive through the 1970s, but in 1980, the United States Navy began to reactivate all 4 Iowa-class battleships in response to the launching of the Soviet Union's Kirov-class battlecruiser. All 4 U.S. battleships went on to serve throughout the 1980s and participated in the attacks on Iraq and Operation Desert Storm, after of which all 4 battleships were once again decommissioned. All 4 Iowa-class battleships are now museums. The USS New Jersey can be seen in Camden, New Jersey, the USS Wisconsin in Norfolk, Virginia, the USS Iowa in Los Angeles, California, and the USS Missouri in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Similarly, the last U.S. steam locomotive left the main line in April of 1960. Several hundred steam locomotives in the United States now run excursion services throughout the country, the mightiest of which is the Union Pacific Big Boy number 4014 operating in Cheyenne, Wyoming, the Southern Pacific Daylight number 4449 operating in Portland, Oregon, and the SPS 800-484 locomotive also operating out of Portland, Oregon. In conclusion, the inspiration for my video was the realization that both the steam-powered warship known as the Battleship and steam locomotives came into this world together. And most fittingly, both the steam locomotive and the battleship left primary service together and now serve identical roles in today's society. And with that, I thank you for watching my video.